Welcome back, everyone, to episode 6 of A Glimpse into Infinity. Today's episode will be about relationships and expectations. This is our first episode where we're doing kind of like a continuation of a previous episode, with episode 3 being with our guests Brian and Dan about their relationship experience. And for this episode, we have both of their girlfriends here. We have Mel and Melanie here. If you guys can give a quick introduction about yourself.
I can go first.
You want to go first? Okay.
Okay.
You can go
My name
first.
is Melanie, but we're just calling me Mel for this episode. In the last episode, my relationship is with Brian, so I've been together for 4 years. And I'm a senior studying math at NYU.
Okay, my name is Melanie. I'm Daniel's girlfriend. I'm currently in the radiology program at County. Yeah.
Hold up.
Nice.
I thought Brian said it was 3 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Oh yeah, it's about to be 4 years in like May, but like basically there. I mean, like 4 months away, but like basically there.
All right.
I thought just the anniversary passed.
Yeah. So you're like the glass is half full, and then Brian is the glass is half empty. Then he rounds down, you round up.
For certain things. For certain things.
All right.
All right. With that being said, let's give a quick recap of our relationship status. Or me and Juan, because you guys went. So I'll start. So I've been in a couple relationships, but in the past, but I don't think they've amassed to anything serious. So for this episode, my experiences will be kind of like one-sided because I don't have that experience in a serious relationship.
Yeah, and for me, I'm currently still in the long distance relationship. You know, still there, still holding strong. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Okay. And for this question was asked to Dan, but well, not to Dan, but in general. But let's get started with the questions. So we want to start the questions off with, so we have some different topics for today. For today, we're going to start one of the topics with, does a relationship cloud one's reality with feelings? So we wanted to ask if being single for an extended period of time clouds your reality with feelings. What do you guys think?
I think it does. So I feel like it's better to be single for a long time because then you do know what you want in a person versus like if you're constantly going from like relationship to relationship, you don't really know what you want. You're just looking for what the previous person had in the new relationship.
Oh, well. No, what do you think?
I agree with that, but I also want to add on to that.
Okay.
Because like it's like interesting because when you think about it, sometimes like what you said, you jump around from relationship to relationship. So like you would want the same thing that some other person had. But, like even when you've been single and then you've been in a relationship, depending on how long the duration of the relationship was, sometimes you still won't know what you want. Because like you'll be like, okay, I'll like look to have the same things that this past relationship had, but then like when you do those same things, you're like, okay, I don't really enjoy this. So I think it does, but it's also a good thing to be single because then you start to learn things like you do, like Melanie said, because then you figure out if you want to stay in relationships and if you don't.
Okay. And Juan, let me hear your feedback.
I guess it kind of does to a certain extent, like at least from like the men point of view, right? So like I guess men grow up, they're like, well, especially now, it's like, oh, like treat women nicely, you know, like win her heart over basically, right? But then you have like all these guys saying like, oh, I'm a good guy, but then I still end up last, you know? And this was what they think to themselves. It might not be true, right? I know girls think that most guys will say they're not good guys. In most cases, it's true, right? But guys think that, oh, I'm a nice guy, and then she went over with like the bad guy, right? And then they start realizing like being a good guy is not it no more. And then they start doing like I guess the bad things to get the girls over, and they become like more of like kind of like a fuckboy, you know? They start getting jacked up. They start buying things to impress females, and then that seems to work for them. And I guess to that extent, it kind of does, like being single, cloud your reality with feelings, because then your initial goal was to get like a good girl, but now you're doing things, right? You buying things, you're showing off, you're trying to impress girls, but the kind of girls that this attract was not the girl you were looking for at the beginning. So it does cloud it to that extent, I believe.
And just to end that off, I think that after what everyone said, I think I also agree with you guys. But I think it does cloud, like when being single for an extended period of time, I think it does cloud your reality with feelings. And I think sometimes it can go one of two ways. It could be in a good way, like when you guys said, like learning what you guys want, or it can go in a bad way, where some guys, from what I've seen, they get desperate and they lower their expectations instead of meeting them, right? So I feel like sometimes, and to continue off of that, I wanted to ask everyone. So then, sometimes when those guys who go along, who lower their expectations, and they finally get into that relationship, would you say that they're happy because it's what they want, or would you say it's happy because they're finally in a relationship?
Yeah. So with that, it's like we're talking like guys that were like single or girls too. It doesn't matter for like an extended period of time. So they were like at the end, they're like, damn, I really need something. I want something. You know.
I think it's more so like, you can go ahead.
I know you could go.
But I was gonna say, I was like, I think it's kind of like that where, actually, never mind. I forgot my thoughts, so you can go ahead. Because
I was gonna say, oh crap, I think I also forgot what I was gonna say. I think if they're secure in themselves, then they won't be willing enough to like let down their expectations. But I feel like if they've been single and they're like, man, like I just really can't do this anymore, like if they're really that desperate, I think then eventually they will let themselves like lower their expectations, that they won't be happy, because you can be like, okay, I want a relationship with a guy. He needs to hold the door open for me. He needs to buy me flowers every single time. But then you're like going out with like these different guys and they don't hold up those expectations. And then you settle for like this one guy that doesn't do anything and be like, man, this is not what I wanted. Whereas I think you should not be desperate enough to keep your expectations high, or like however you want them, in order to be happy in a relationship.
yeah, so basically, I'm gonna kind of repeat what you said, but like, I don't think they're ever gonna be happy if they lower their expectations, because like in that relationship, they're just gonna be like, oh, they aren't doing this thing. Like, I'm expecting you to do this, and they're not doing this. And it's, I mean, in most cases, the best thing to do is to communicate that, and if they still aren't doing it, then like it's not gonna work. But I don't think they're ever gonna be happy. But I think also, I don't really know if you guys want to touch upon this, but I just want to like bring it up real quick, because like it also just comes with the idea, at least for like men specifically, like they think that they're like losers, or like, I don't know, like they're just like lower than everyone else if they aren't in a relationship. But like that's never really the case. I think that's sometimes what happens when they're like, oh my god, like I need to be in a relationship because like I don't know, everyone else is in a relationship, so like it's weird if I'm not. But then it's just like you're not really going to be happy if you don't like the person.
Yeah, I guess to touch up on that point, it was interesting. I think one explanation to that is, I guess when it comes to females that are, I guess, above average or overly successful, you only see them getting with one guy, right? So a female that's overly successful in, like, let's say the common sense of the people, she's only going to choose one guy. She's only with that guy. There can be multiple guys chasing her, but she will like block them off and only stay with that one guy. But when it comes to men that are over the top, right? Like let's say in high school they're like extremely popular or whatever, you get like all the chicks around him, right? And even if he's not necessarily with them, like girlfriend and boyfriend, they will still only dedicate themselves to him and be around him, only talk to him, and basically block off everyone else. And I guess that's why it's different, and that's why men think they're more of the loser kind, because you get like all the females are being attracted to this small percentage of guys, and then we left like guys are left behind with like basically girls not giving attention to them. Meanwhile, girls, like even if the girl is extra successful, it's only going to be one guy with her, you know. So like every other guy is still out there, and I think that's where it might come from.
And I think Mel also brought an interesting point when she said that you shouldn't lower your expectations because you won't be happy. I wanted to piggyback off of that, and I wanted to ask you guys, when do you think expectations are set too high? Like, what about that person, right? Let's look at the cases real quick. What would you say to someone who has too high of expectations? And that could be one of the main factors as to why they're not in a relationship. But they think that if they don't meet those expectations, they won't be happy. So that's why they're set so high.
I think some of it might come from like personal, like not issues, but like personal ideals. Because like I don't know, I feel like there are a lot of times where you set expectations and they're obviously
Yeah.
going to be too high, but it's because you're expecting the other person or you're expecting someone else to be this like perfect, like ideal solution. But
Yeah.
like no one is perfect, you know? So like I'm not saying settle, but like
Mm.
there's just has to be like a realistic approach to it because like obviously there are going to be a lot of expectations that can be met, but like not everyone can be, not each one can be done by the partner. Like it also has to be done on your part because you can't just expect someone in the relationship to do one thing and
Yeah.
then you don't, for the most part, return that favor because it just
Mm.
seems like unfair because like you're just expecting them to do everything in a sense and you're just like not even like putting in the effort to do it
Mm.
yourself.
So compromise is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Compromise. Okay, gotcha. Melanie, what do you think?
I was actually thinking like you should keep your standards as high as you want because at the end of the day, like you know who's gonna make you happy. But after hearing what Mel said, I kind of do agree. Like if your expectations are too high and you don't meet somebody who like can fulfill all of them the way that you want it, I feel like it's not gonna work out in the relationship. So I do agree, like yes, you should compromise, but at the same time, don't settle for like lowering your expectations.
Okay. And I guess let's take a look at the other side then. I guess I can say with confidence that we all kind of date at a young age, right? Right? We all started like pretty young doing that stuff. So then did the lack of expectation help those initial relationships kind of last, right? Because you think you might want something in a relationship, but then you learn that's not how things are. So
Mm.
you are still coming into like your first relationship with no expectations at all on how things are run, what she's gonna do, like what's acceptable or not. So you think that made it last, that helped it?
I think yes and no. You can go ahead,
I think no, because when you like the way that I see it, when you go into a relationship for the first time, you do have like the societal norms of like what you should and shouldn't do in a relationship.
Mm.
And like for me, like my biggest influence when finding like a boyfriend or whatever was my mom. Like she was always like make sure like they treat you with like basic respect, like they're not like doing shady things, you know. So I feel like that kind of like shapes your expectations. So I feel like it's not that we lack or like we don't have expectations. It's like we're more influenced by outside factors than like what we expect personally.
Mm.
Interesting.
I agree with that, but I want to add on to it.
Okay.
So I was going to say yes and no, because I think like it does make it last longer because we're young, and so it's kind of just like you in a sense, you know, like you like know some things you want, but you don't really know everything, and so like I feel like in like that first long relationship, you kind of just like accept things that happen and you don't really question it as much. But then at the same time, I feel like you also have outside resources in a sense. So you can see like different relationships and you can be like, oh, like this is something I would want in my relationship. And like you see, like another way can be like, this is something I would want. But it is kind of different because sometimes it is like personal, but then sometimes it's just like a lot of times, I mean, actually a lot of times, it's more like you see it on TV or like in TV shows. Like that kind of sucks. Like most of the time it's like true, but like it's just like too excessive, you know, like it's just like it's like not realistic and it's just like why and but like when you're young you're like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
But like no.
Yeah, it's like you see a guy on the subway and he follows you home because he's in love with you. It's like that's kind of creepy in real life, man. You know,
But the movies is cute because they make it look a certain
So they
way.
play the
Right?
music, they have the setting, the lights, the rain. And then in reality, it's like, yo, who's that guy
Yeah.
in the hoodie?
So then I guess let's ask you this since we also asked this to the guys.
Yeah.
So which position would you rather see yourself in? The like of the extremes. The first one we mentioned where it's like your expectations are too high because you've been through so many relationships that you're like, it's like, I definitely don't want that again. I don't want that, I don't want that. Or do you want to see yourself at the beginning where like everything seems perfect and like Mel said, you let things slide because Mhm.
So like only two extremes.
Yeah. Which of the streams would you rather be on?
I'd rather be on the higher end because like you know, like you like it's you get to a certain point, like if you like been through like a long enough time, you're kind of just like, okay, I don't want to keep repeating things. And so it's kind of just like a self-respect, I think, kind of aspect because you learn to like, you know, like respect your own boundaries and you're like, okay, like this is really bothering me and I don't want to keep this held in. So I'd rather have higher expectations so that like there's more communication. I can actually tell them like, oh, this is bothering me, or like this is what I need to happen, you know, instead of just being like, oh, it's okay. Like it's just like such bullshit. Like we shouldn't have to like suffer through things that we don't want to, you know, like it doesn't make any sense. But like it's just like the societal norm where you're just like, you know what, like you just take what you can get. But
I do agree. I would definitely keep my expectations high, just so like you don't have to, I guess, like suffer all over again when trying to find like a person in your life.
And
Yeah.
oh yeah,
No,
just
no.
to end it off, I was gonna say I also agree that you should keep those high expectations, because I feel like once you're starting and you're like in my situation, right? I feel like it's very easy for me and a bunch of other guys to romanticize the relationship and see things for not what they are, but what you think they are. You get me? And then in that case, you end up being in something that you're not into, but you think you're into. And you're like, the idea of them is better than the actual version of them. And I feel like that's why people settle. But Juan, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I do agree at the end, but I was also gonna add up like one point
Hmm.
that aids like being at the beginning, because like we said, everything seems perfect and you like let things slide by. So that notion that everything seems perfect as you perceive it, it's like you lose that essence as you go throughout, right? And one example is I was going through my old Snapchats. No, not my Snapchats, my posts on Instagram. And I posted a screenshot of one of my exes that she sent like 10 messages and like 5 calls when I told her I was gonna be busy, right? And the caption that I put was like, wow, she really cares, you know? And looking back, that shit was just toxic as hell. That shit was just toxic. And I was like, ain't no way I thought that like that was like caring, you know? So that essence of that you perceive those things as being perfect, you know, you've missed that throughout.
Mm. Going off that first, because like I know Mel said this earlier with expectations, and how when you're first starting, you usually see off the media, off movies, off shows, you say, oh, this is why this is my standards for a perfect guy or perfect girl, right? Because this is what the TV shows. But I wanted to bring up the topic on how that affects you, especially when you're younger, right? Especially like on a girl's perspective with like dolls and princesses. Do you think that's why some girls have like that high standards of like the perfect guy because of those things?
Yeah. I read we did like the psychology thing.
Yeah.
So when a girl is younger, the media like that's more towards her is meant to be more romantic. Whereas for guys, it's meant to be more of like just sex and just like how many girls can I have? So I think especially because the way I don't know if like Mel was also raised like this, but I'm a huge daddy's girl. My dad spoiled me like with not like physical stuff, but like with like the emotional aspect. So like whenever I was like single and I was like looking for somebody to be in a relationship with, I had to have somebody that would do the things that would live up to how my dad did them. Not that I'm like romantically involved with my dad, but like just like those similar aspects,
Yeah.
like I had to have them because I was like, I'm not gonna be treated less than how my dad like did it with me. And like your dad is really like a girl's first true love in a sense, like psychologically, I mean. So I feel like you do look for somebody that like can emulate those things that you see with like the little like teen movies, or like, oh yeah, like this guy, like he lives like an hour away from me, but he like drove all the way to see me. He bought me flowers, he bought me chocolates, he did this. So I feel like for guys, it's like, why do I have to do all these things when the guys media is just like action movies and more like, oh yeah, like I just have to get jacked. I just have to look hot because like these girls want me because I'm hot, not because of like what I do for them.
I agree with like most of what you said. And I just want to bring up like the idea of like the male gaze and the female gaze, because like it's a really big thing in society and just like media that like the male gaze is like these like women think either like, I'm gonna get women because like I work out or like I'm attractive and I get money, but like the female gaze is like, okay, like I want you to talk to me, like listen to me, communicate with me, you know, like it's like spend time with me. But it's because of the way media is portrayed to us, like since we were younger. I think she's a really good point where like the more emotional and like romantic aspect was like put onto women And like the more of just like, oh, like you can just be with whoever you want to be. Like it doesn't have to be a long relationship. It could just be like purely physical. It could be emotional if you want. Like there's no like expectation for them. But like for us, for like women at least, I feel like there were. So yeah.
Do you think, I just want to add something to that. Do you think this is your mindset now and it might change in the future? Because what I seen from experience is that when women get older, they also tend to put like this like romanticism, these feelings more aside, and then they do start caring for other things such as like the money, right? And I guess some women specifically because they might need the money, right? They might have kids and so on. But also because when we're at Florida, we were talking to our Uber driver, right? He was a really great guy. He was like, "Oh yeah, when you start dating at my age, like every person know what they want, and like you avoid all the romanticism, all that nonsense, and you get straight to the point. It's like she knows what I want, she gives it to me, and I just give her my credit card so she can go and buy her what she wants. And I would get straight to the point. No nonsense, no, I love you, oh sweetheart, this and that. We skip all of that and we just get straight to the point. And he says that with like people that he dates. So he's like they are in a relationship, but they just skip all that. He called it like all that nonsense and they just get straight to the point.
I mean, I feel at like that point, it's not really a relationship. It's more like a transactional relationship in a sense. Like even if it's not like money based, it's like, oh, you do this thing for me, I do this for you. Like it's just kind of like this routine they get. But I feel like it's not really that much of a relationship because like you should be in a relationship because you like the other person and you like who they are and like you'd want to grow with them, not just because like, oh, like they do this one thing I want and it's good. Like, like I don't even care if I don't like them or not. Like they do this thing and we're done. So.
Yeah, I think the reason why like people who are older get into relationships is just so they can say like they have somebody. It's not like we're us where we're younger, like we look for somebody to share our lives with. But I feel like if they started young and then like they ended up breaking up for whatever reason, the only reason they're dating now is just so like, oh, to say like I'm not alone, like I have this person, even though it's how Mel said, it's just transactional.
All right. So I guess now that we're talking like I guess young relationships and then old ones, like experience and all that stuff. Do you girls think you're at the point where you can have a date with a guy and you think that's enough to understand like whether like, oh, that's like this guy is pretty good, Or when do you think, or if you're not at that point, when do you think you'll get to that point?
I feel like that's kind of hard. Feels like at least for me, I know I wouldn't know by the first date. Like if I was like dating, trying to find someone, I don't think I would know by the first date. I think it'd probably take a few days because like I don't know. I feel like the first day is more like first impressions first of all. So like you kind of just like put the most like you can out there and like the best thing that you can put out there. But like like it can't always be perfect. And so like there has to be like some not like flaws, but like there's some things that are different. And so like I don't know, I think I need more time to be like, oh, like, okay, like these things, like they think this way, or like they would approach certain things to do this instead and then this. And so like I think that like from that, then I would be able to be like, oh, okay, like I do want to continue this relationship or like I don't.
Okay.
I feel like for like the first day, like that's how do I say it? Like the first day is definitely like first impressions, like how Mel said. Because you really get to like see how like if you're out at a restaurant, you can see how like the person acts like in public or like with other people and stuff like that. So I feel like I think now, from what I experienced, like my friends that are dating, like their first date, they're like, yeah, like I know for a fact I don't want to be with this person anymore. They're like, there's no second date, like nothing. It ends like right there because of like you can tell a lot from the person from the first date. But like I guess to know like for sure, you would definitely have to go on like a lot of dates because you can't really tell like if you're interested in a person, like, oh yeah, it could just be because he's nice or he has a lot of money, has a nice car. But I feel like to like really deeply know, like you would have, I want to say maybe like a month, like 2 months.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you think relationships should lead your life or complement it?
Compliment. Always.
Yeah, we brought this example because we're discussing how like it's more common for women to like leave everything behind and go with the guy than for guys to leave everything behind and go with the woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought an example because I knew someone like they were dating back in I think Argentina, and like the girl was well off over there. She had like really like I say wealthy parents, so she was wealthy. And like the guy, she left everything to come here with the guy illegally and start from zero again. You know,
And yeah.
so her life was led by the relationship. You know.
Mm-hmm. Another example I gave was someone I know, a friend of mine. He works in Pennsylvania, and then this was like a while ago, and his girlfriend moved in with him in Pennsylvania. She even chose the college she was going to in Pennsylvania after they moved in together. And it was until after they moved in that they realized that they weren't really meant for each other, and they broke things off. But she still goes to college in PA, and that's also another example of a relationship leading your life.
Yeah, I agree with Melanie said. I think it should complement it because, like, well, first of all, you never know. I mean, obviously, you hope the relationship will last, but you never actually know. So it's best to make decisions for yourself and not just for the other person. And if like you're in a relationship with the other person, you would hope that they would respect that and not like try to like gaslight you in a way. Be like, why aren't you doing this for me? Because like I don't know. I mean, like obviously you want a relationship to last forever, but like they might not. You know, so you don't want to make decisions based off of like your relationship, and it'd be better to make it based off of yourself.
I agree with that too, because it's like you want to have your own ideas and like your own like ideals and your morals and stuff like that. And not like just in case the relationship fails, but like just so like you as a person can grow independently while you're still in the relationship.
Okay.
Well, I guess yeah, we wanted to bring this up real quick because Brian did mention that he might have to relocate, right? So I guess Mel, would you basically follow him, or it's like, nah, you good, bro?
Mixed feelings, because like also depends on where I get a job, you know. Because like I mean, I'm not gonna like base my job based on like where he's working. It's more so like if I like the position. So like mentally, I'm like yes, like not mentally, like in my emotions, I'm like yes, I'm gonna follow him, but like logically, I'm like I'm not gonna follow this man. Like I love him and everything, but like I'll just visit him. Like doesn't make any sense for me to follow him if like the job I want might be like here, like in New York. It doesn't make any sense, but like emotionally, I'm like yes, but no, I will not.
Yeah, because it should complement it, not lead. Yeah.
And there's also a quote we're gonna bring up that behind every successful man is a strong woman. I think me and Juan were talking about this before. Juan, if you want to give a little background as to, hold on one sec.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think have you guys heard that quote? It's like, yeah, a lot of successful guys use it and they're like, yeah, I'm here because of like the woman I have behind me, you know? So I guess that goes kind of into like this whole thing of like, should a relationship lead your life or or complement it, you know? And I guess for these guys, they do agree with you. He complemented it and he complemented it in a good way, right? But I guess he got to the point where like he complemented it so much that they achieved like this new level of success that basically started kind of like leading the woman's life because she's like, you know, she's like at this point where like she basically helped create this man's like entire like business and entire plan. So it's not only his work, but it's also her work too. And it will be like really hard when you get to that point to just leave all that.
And just to piggyback off that, just like a follow-up question, I want to ask if you think that people in general tend to lose their sense of self in those serious relationships. Because yes, we both said, or you guys both said that relationship shouldn't lead your life but complement. But do you think that people tend to lose their sense of self? Like they stop hanging out with friends to maintain the relationship, because once you get older, maintaining that full-time relationship, possibly family and like personal activities, is difficult.
Yeah. So relating to what we just said, you know, you're like at that point where it's like, damn, I invested so much. It's like, why would I end everything all like by hanging out with some friends, which is something that like, let's say he doesn't want me to do, you know?
I think it's more how you go into the relationship at first, because like I know Brian first, and then I know like from the podcast, he said that he's a very like strong sense of self, which he does.
Mhm.
So like going into the relationship, he's had it. So like he hasn't lost it because it's just something he's had. But like for me, like I don't have a strong sense of self. So like going into the
Mm.
relationship at first, I was just like, oh, like I don't really mind spending all my time with him. But then like getting to a certain point, I was like, I don't want to spend all my time with him. Like I mean like I do, but like I should be spending time with friends, you know, like I
Yeah.
shouldn't only be spending time with him. So it's something like that I'm working on. So like I think it's like something you can lose, but it is also something you can gain again. It's not something you just like lose forever because you can always just work to like gain that back. But it's just if you want to put in that work and if that person wants to continue to grow with you in that sense.
Mm. Okay. Melanie?
I do agree, especially with like long-term relationships. Not saying
Yeah.
that this happens all the time, but a lot of the times you can lose yourself. But like just how
Mhm.
Mel said, like if you lose yourself, you can't work towards finding yourself again, like doing your own things independently. I think I don't know if it's because of how like my past relationships have been, but like I don't mind spending all my time with Daniel, but like sometimes I'm like, bro, like we need like I give him his own space and then
Yeah.
like I have my own space, you know. And even if we're just like on FaceTime and it's like silent, but we're both doing homework, like that's I feel like is our own space, like our own time, but
Mm.
like still within the relationship.
Yeah.
But like I do feel like me personally, if I were to spend like right now, because we're still like new to the relationship,
Mhm.
I think right now if we were to spend all our time together, like it would be really hard to find our own sense of selves. Because it's so still new really. And I feel like you would really just be like enveloped with like the other person, you know? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like you would be spending all your time early on in the relationship where you would just like
Yeah.
end up losing yourself. And then you can't come out because like the whole time you with them, you're like, oh my God, like I don't know how to do anything for myself because I've been with them this entire time.
Yeah. Another way that it might be perceived is like, oh, she basically texts me all the time. Now she's not. It's like, is she losing feelings for me? You know, and that person
Mm-hmm.
might perceive it as like, oh, just because she's distancing herself away from me, that means she's losing feelings for me, and
Mm.
this is ending. You know, and like that starts a train of thoughts, which are not good.
And just to piggyback off that, you guys both said that, or Melanie said that sense of self, or you guys both said sense of self is important. Mel said that it wasn't really important at first, but now it is. And I wanted to ask, follow up with that, with kind of like the structure, the foundation of a relationship, right? If you guys both let's say in a relationship, if both parties need a strong sense of self, do you think someone has to lead the relationship in order to make it work? Or do you think that strong sense of self will make it work without anyone kind of like taking control?
Yeah, we say this in the sense not like controlling. It's like, hey, you
Yeah.
gotta do this, and that. But I guess in the way of like guiding it and giving it a path, right? Because I think we brought up how for guys and girls it's really different the way we look at life. Because girls they technically have a time limit with things, you know. So you girls know this since you're young. So you know you have to basically have kids by a certain age. And if you want to have kids with like a man that's gonna stay with you when you have kids, you're gonna have to start dating 3 years before at least, so you can really get to know him and really make sure that's the person you want to have kids with, right? So you have this path already set for you technically. But guys, we don't really have a path, right? So we're just out there doing whatever we want. And like, you know, we don't really have that. So when we asked the guys, they said, oh, like no one really needs to lead the relationship. Well, I'm thinking we might get a different answer from you girls since you do have like a path already kind of laid ahead of you.
I feel like if you're both like independent and like you both know what you want in life, nobody really
Mm.
has to like lead the relationship. And like there's that joke like, oh, like women always lead the relationship. I mean, it's like kind of true, but it's more of like if you're both independent, you both have like strong values and you know what you want and you're willing to compromise. I feel like you don't really need somebody to like guide you in your relationship because everything's just gonna like flow naturally, even if you have arguments about certain things.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just gonna work out in the end if you want it to work out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think anyone needs to lead because I think more to be like give and take. So like if both parties have like a strong sense of self, it'll be like they'll recommend something and so like, they both do, and then the other person will. It's like I think it always just like it doesn't have to like clash, or it doesn't have to be like one is better than the other. I think it always just like work out, especially if they talk about it.
Interesting. And let's look at the people who, like, what would you say to someone whose relationship is being led? Do you think that makes it controlling?
I think like little by little, eventually it would become controlling because it's like the idea of like being toxic in a relationship is very popular now. And I feel like having somebody who is demanding of the other person a lot, like that's like what people fantasize now. I feel like that shouldn't be the case. And if somebody does feel like their relationship is coming to that, then they should really like sit down with their partner and be like, hey, I feel like about this, about this stuff. Like, can we talk about it? Like, I'm not feeling like independent in the relationship. Like, what can we do to work on this?
I completely agree with that. But I do want to like mention it's kind of like because like it depends the person as well.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes they won't really like. I mean, I feel like they would recognize that like the relationship is being led by the other person, but it's just an issue of like if it would bother them because there are some people that just like it. They like to be dependent on someone else, and they're like, okay, this is good for me. But then there are other people that are like, no, I don't want this to keep going. And like Melanie said, like you would just talk about it and be like, hey, like this is bothering me. I want to work on this. And then hopefully the other person would support you. But like it just depends on where they are and how they feel about being dependent on someone else.
Yeah. So I guess something interesting that you just mentioned, it was like it's a thing of like give and take.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and then they should also complement each other, right? But then you see a lot of cases where like ambitious people get with a partner, and then it basically hinders them from pursuing their goals, right? So I personally seen like friends like they really had a lot of goals in mind, or they really wanted to get a lot of things accomplished, but then they get with a partner, and basically all of that shuts down, right? And they basically don't do anything at all. Is that you think that comes from like the other person that completely hinders them, or a change of view from in their mind?
I think it's more a change of view. Because I think there'd be like two parts to it. It'd be like one, you just become like idealistic and you're like, oh, like I don't really need anything else. I just want to be with this person right now. You know, like it's like the honeymoon phase kind of. You're just like, oh, like this is great. Like I just want this and that's it. Or it could be just like their own perspective on what they want has changed. Like it's not as big as like completing actual goals and just like completing personal goals, I guess. So I think it could go one of two ways. But I think sometimes it's more of like the idealistic part where you're just like, oh, like I really like this relationship and I think it's going really well right now. So like I'm just gonna put my time and energy into this.
I think it's both people's fault. Like you're asking if it's the other person that hinders the relationship.
Yeah.
I think it would be like both people's faults because you are responsible for you at the end of the day. And like if you're independent, like you have your own ideas that you want to do and stuff. So I feel like if you're allowing somebody to hinder you in a relationship where you're not as like ambitious as you used to be, I feel like I don't know if that's just because like I see it as like people should be like responsible for their own actions. It's not like they should be putting the blame on other people. But I do feel like if you are being hindered and you're not as ambitious and people like your friends or like people outside the relationship are being like, oh, like why are you not doing the things that you used to be? Like you should really like see how your partner is working into your life. Because then at that point, like if you have like big ambitions to like start your own business, and then your partner's like, oh well, maybe you know you really shouldn't do that because XYZ, but it's something that you really wanted to do. I feel like it could get in the way, and then you end up regretting like not going for the things that like you wanted to do before the person came along.
Yeah, I guess
that's like I didn't say that's a great point Melanie just made, and I agree with her that the relationship shouldn't hinder you from your goals. At the end of the day, I feel like what she said, just to reiterate, you are responsible for you. And I feel like at that point, for that example, it'd be like kind of like the relationship is leading your life, not complementing it.
Yeah. Because one example where you see that often is like people that used to go to the gym a lot and like that were just really fit overall. And then they get with this person that they didn't really go to the gym. And they instead of going to the gym, they just go out and eat every day. You know? So now it's like a double negative. It's like you stop going to the gym, but now you're also eating out every day. So it's a double negative in your life. And some people are willing to sacrifice that, but then some are not. They're like, hey man, I want to get back into the gym. but it's
Mm.
really hard when their partner doesn't, and she's just like, "Nah, let's go eat," and and like, yeah, basically what you said. Mm-hmm.
And just to follow up, switch topics real quick. We wanted to ask, since we talked about basically complimenting or leading, we talked about relationships in the future, relationships in the beginning. We want to ask you guys, both of you guys, if there's any actions that would prevent you from ever basically being in a relationship again. And what I just give an example. When we asked this, when we told Brian about him relocating and him and Mel possibly splitting up, he said that he wouldn't be able to, like, he says that emotionally he'd be exhausted and he probably wouldn't find a partner for years on end. So do you guys think that, like, what's an example of, or do you think that would ever happen in your life, or there's something that you think you just won't be in a relationship afterwards, or ever loving again is a better way of putting it?
I think it's always possible. Like it's sort of the mindset you have, and I mean, like you can always like be like, oh, like I'm looking for this specifically.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just happens, but I don't think like after being in a relationship for a long time, I don't think it should like hinder you for like future relationships you could have. Because I mean, you kind of get into a mindset. You're like I probably like this. Like I'm not doing this again. Like this is too much work. Like I've put too much into this. Like I'm done. But like, I mean, like, yes, I understand that point, but like it shouldn't stop you from like getting into another relationship. And I'm not saying like an immediate relationship, and it obviously doesn't have to be like, oh, like I want to be just in a relationship, because like I feel like there are a lot of relationships that happen from friendships. So it comes up like unexpected. So something you're just like planning to do.
Yeah.
But I think it shouldn't stop you from anything.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like especially if you if you ended on good terms with your like person, I feel like that's not really a reason to be like, oh yeah, I'm never gonna like be with another person ever again. I'm never gonna do anything for like guys, like whatever. But I think it also depends on the person too, because like if you have had like multiple relations and on bad terms because they cheated on you or whatever, I feel like it would be a little bit harder because you do have to like trust. Like trust is a really big thing in a relationship.
Yeah.
So like those things could hinder you, but I feel like even if you're dating somebody for like 10 years and you guys never got married or whatever, I feel like that's not really gonna stop you if like you really learn to become independent again and you learn how to put yourself first before looking for a relationship. That's how I see it.
All right. And I guess a quick follow-up to that is like, so is there any actions, I guess, in your current relationship that like any previous or I guess or impending actions, right, that you might regret in the near future? So I guess in Mel's case, it will be like if you decide like to break up with Brian, like if y'all decide that, right, that will be an example.
I don't think I have any. I'm not planning to break up with Brian, so like I hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, I'm not really planning on anything happening, and I don't think anything will, because like I mean, I'm hoping not anything will, because like I'm willing to make it work if he is, and I feel like that's the biggest portion. Like the only way things will continue, and like anyway, like the relationship will prosper. It's like if both of you are willing to put in the effort, because if only one of you is, and it's kind of just like you might as well just like get the end result and be like, okay, like this isn't happening, this isn't working, like we're over.
Yeah.
But like if you're both willing to put in the effort and the energy, then I feel like it's fine.
No, same for you, Melanie. Nothing.
Yeah, I feel like because my relationship with Dan is still so new, like we're still learning a lot about each other. So it's kind of hard to say like, oh yeah, if, like he did this, like it'll be completely over. Because I feel like I'm also his first girlfriend, so he doesn't really know how to do certain things. Like he's not as sensitive.
Or you exposing him though?
Yeah, for
No,
real.
I mean it's true.
So you didn't watch this episode, start crying.
No, stop. He's gonna text me like, why did you say that? I'm like, it has to know the truth. But it is true though, because when you're not in a serious relationship and you get into one, you're not as like sensitive to certain things as like you're not as sensitive to the other person. So like you just kind of like learn and like go off, and like obviously like if he were to do something that I'm like, okay, like this is never gonna work out ever again, then I would like be upfront and be like, hey, you did this, there's no reason for me to pursue this relationship anymore. it's done, and like there's nothing that could really change my mind. But I feel like for now, like he's been pretty good as a boyfriend, like he's getting there, whatever. But I feel like in Mel and Brian's case, like they really know each other like really well because they've been dating for almost 4 years. So I feel like not that I don't know, I don't want to speak on the relationship, so if I'm wrong, I feel like there's really no room for error because they know each other so well. So if something were to happen, it's like come on, like you guys have been together for like so long. Like how is this not possibly gonna work out? Whereas like a newer relationship, it's kind of easy to like let things go, but be like, like I didn't like that. Let's talk about it. This is why I didn't like it, and move on from it.
Okay.
Can I touch upon something she said real quick?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So okay, it's just like a really big. This is something I was talking about with a friend. This like I think like 2 weeks ago, last week. Because the idea that like it's hard for men to be emotional in a sense, because like that's something that Brian's also working on, because like it's not something that, it's just like not his strong suit, and I think it just happens to a lot of men, and it's because like I might be getting too deep into this, but like it's just because like I saw this like video too, because it's like the idea of like normally men relationships, they're mostly just like not like it's more like talkative and not like anything, like it's just surface level is what I'm trying to say, like, but like with women's relationships most of the time there are emotional components to it. So then like when a guy gets into a relationship, I feel like for the most part they really won't know how to engage in that emotional aspect because they've never done it before. And I don't think it's all men, obviously, but I feel like it's a fair amount of them because like like I feel like sometimes the conversations with men, they don't really go into like what's going on in your life, how you're doing. It's more of like, you want to play this video game? You want to go hang out at the skate park? Like, it's very like I don't know, it's like surface. But I feel like that's also an aspect because like it's just hard to do something you've never really been accustomed to doing unless you've had like a lot of women friends or like anything like that, or like an older sibling. I've seen a lot happen that like you start to learn more things. But yeah.
I guess for me, it's kind of different actually in my relationship. Like, I struggle with her getting her to talk to me like about like this, like herself, right? It's like, so I feel like comfortable enough with her that I just tell her everything, right? Everything with like all details, right? But with her, it's like she keeps at that surface. And then like she does get into like the deep stuff, but only like in certain occasions. So I don't know I don't know why. I think that's how she is. Definitely, she's just like that. She just sees us surface, and it's like, okay, it's like I didn't really need to tell you that, right? It's like, or you didn't ask me. That's her response usually. It's like, well, you didn't ask me, and I was like, you didn't ask me either, and I still told you, right? But I guess it's different. Well, I guess but I had other experiences where it's like exactly as you said. It's like one time this girl was crying. She's like, why are you not crying? You're not sad? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't really need to cry, to show that I'm sad, right? And I do agree with you. I think men do show more like about like that they care and their feelings with their actions, most of it. Like you can tell by a man's action whether he cares and all that stuff, right? Whether women they show it with like their emotions right there.
Yeah, it's a great point. And just to piggy off of that, from my experience, I think Juan's definitely right. And I think in the last episode, I gave an example, or in the third episode, I gave an example on emails sent to professors that just like to explain, just to reinforce the idea that girls thinking more emotionally, guys are more kind of like rigid, right? And just out of everything we said today, I kind of wanted to end off things with one final question. I wanted to ask you guys both if you think it's better to have loved or never have loved in the first place.
Yeah, I guess
Because
since.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say since I don't think I've been through like those hard breakups or relationships, where like you're just devastated. But some people have. So I guess look at it from your point of view, but also look at it from like an external point of view. Like, yeah.
I feel like it's definitely better to have loved and lost. Just because it's like it really builds your character and it really like tells you like, okay, like I'm looking for these characteristics in a person. Because like for example, I've been cheated on twice in my past relationships, but I've also cheated. So like I've been on both sides, and it's like I would never want to be with somebody that like does shady things like from the get-go, where I'm like, but
Yeah.
in those relationships, it has taught me like, okay, you know, like I'm not going to put up with certain things because like that's just not who I am anymore. So I feel like if you are like so devastated over a heartbreak,
Mm.
like the best advice is time does heal all wounds. You know, you just have to like let like the emotions go. You just have to like cry it out if you need to, just be sad, be angry, whatever. And it definitely does like build your character in the end, and it does help your future relationship.
I really agree with what she said. I think it's a really good point. I also agree with that it's better to be loved than not loved at all. Because like, you know, like there's just so many things you could. It's just like you just miss out on so many things if you don't go through that experience. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, just like it's just like eye opening in a sense because like there's just so much out there. And it's like if you never like if you love things, you're just like, wow, I've done so many things, and like yeah, they might have been shitty, but like they come out to be better because like you said, like time heals everything. So like even as you grow with the time, you're like, oh, like I kind of learned this for myself and from what I want. But like if you've never loved, you kind of just stay in your little like bubble in a sense, and you kind of just don't like expand your ideas or like your personality traits in a sense.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thank you guys for joining or for hopping on. And I know it's virtual. It's our first online episode. So I think it went pretty well. And if you guys have any other questions for the get or for the audience, feel free now to just some advice or question you guys want people to go home with just to think about, ponder about. Feel free.
Just like talk things out, communicate. You know, I think that's the best thing to do in any relationship if you're starting or if it's like a really long-term relationship.
Mhm.
Just make sure to always communicate your needs and what they could be doing or what you could be doing better.
And never settle. Don't ever lower your expectations because you are not going to be happy.
All right. Well, thank you so much then. Yeah, and I guess we'll see you guys next time when we take another closer look into infinity.
Sir,
Have a good
thank you
one,
guys for
guys.
joining.
Thank you.